In Tuvalu, we are living the realities of climate change, sea level rise, time.
Hello friends. In a mysterious part of the Earth, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, is one of the smallest countries in the world, Tuvalu. With a population of only about 11,000 people, this small country is on the verge of being a terrifying example in history. Tuvalu might be the first country whose entire population will need to leave their homes, their land, and their country forever.
We are sinking, but so is everyone else.
And the only reason is climate change. Climate change is an existential threat for the entire humanity. But for now, the countries in the Pacific Ocean face the more severe crisis. To understand what is happening in Tuvalu, we need to understand its location and geography. This is an island nation in the South Pacific Ocean. Exactly at this place, the only major country near it is Australia. In terms of the land area, then after Vatican City, Monaco, and Nauru, it is the fourth smallest country in the world. In total, it is spread over a land area of only 26 square kilometers. This country is made up of 9 small islands. 6 of these islands are atolls. First, it's important to understand what atolls are. They are made up of volcanoes. As you know, there are numerous volcanoes in the middle of the oceans. They are formed and leveled out due to changes in the tectonic plates. When a volcano cools down gradually and starts sinking into the water, the corals around it remain in their place. With time, these corals start rising out over the surface of the water, while soil and rocks keep on accumulating over them. Atolls are shaped like rings with shallow water in the middle. Many islands of Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar are atolls like this, formed when volcanoes sank. But perhaps the Maldives is the best example of this. When you look at the map, you'll notice that the Maldives is made up of 26 atolls. Almost all of the islands are part of some atoll. You can easily distinguish the beginning and the end of an atoll. Unlike islands, atolls don't rise too high above the water. That's why the Maldives is the lowest lying country in the world. The average ground elevation is only 1.5 meters. This is true for Tuvalu too. Tuvalu is among one of the lowest lying countries. The average ground elevation is only 2 meters above the sea level. The highest point of the country is at an altitude of only 4.6 meters. This means that even a small wave or storm is enough to flood the houses, roads, and fields on the banks. The Maldives' capital city island, Mali, is somewhat wide, but look at Tuvalu's main island, Funafuti. It is long and slender like a snake, with only a negligible width. Look at the drone view of their airport. Half of the island is taken up by this airstrip. Friends, these reasons, combined with climate change, admittedly, it will affect all low-lying countries. But Tuvalu might be the first to disappear. You already know about the ice caps in the Arctic and Antarctica melting. Consequently, the sea levels are rising. And the worst news for Tuvalu is that the sea level around Tuvalu is rising faster than in the rest of the world. According to NASA, over these 30 years, the sea level around Tuvalu increased by 15 centimeters, 1.5 times more than the global average. According to NASA's prediction, by 2050, the sea level in Tuvalu will increase by 20 centimeters to 30 centimeters, and by 2100, it will exceed 1 meter, and thus, the frequency of floods in the country will increase manifold. Currently, Tuvalu gets flooded about 5 days a year, but by 2050, it will 25 days. And by 2100, 100 out of the 365 days of the year, Tuvalu will be flooded. NASA claims that if climate change continues on this trajectory, by 2050, Tuvalu's critical infrastructure will mostly remain submerged during high tides. The capital of the country, Funafuti Island, houses 60% of the population. It'll be half submerged. And it is estimated that by 2100, 95% of the country will be submerged. Talk about the future, like the year 2100. It is quite easy to disassociate ourselves from it, because we believe that we won't be around by then. But friends, here we're talking about 2050. In the next 25 years, the critical infrastructure of Tuvalu will be underwater. Most of us might be alive to witness this. This should tell you that climate change is no longer a problem for the future. This affects our present too. NASA predicted this based on satellite data. It analyzed 30 years satellite data. Since 1993, they've been using satellite altimetry to collect reliable data on sea level rise. Scientists then use this data to create a high-resolution digital elevation model. This assesses the flood risks. If cities like Miami and Los Angeles were facing such severe danger, we could have considered relocating the people living there to higher grounds. People would simply move to places at a higher elevation. But the people in Tuvalu do not have this option, because Tuvalu is almost flat. As I said, the highest point is only 4.5 meters above sea level, so they have no high ground to move to when it floods. The second option is to change Tuvalu's geography through human intervention, the way Dubai built the Palm Islands and the World Islands. Similarly, we can have artificial islands in and around Tuvalu to have higher elevation. But the problem with this solution is money. Tuvalu is an extremely small country of 11,000 people. It's not a rich country, so how will they get the money to do this? But despite this, they are trying. New flood-free land is artificially being created on the islands, as you can see in these videos. By 2024, they had already built about 18 to 19 acres of land artificially. It is expected to be safe till the year 2100. They built this new land to prepare for the flood risks of 2100. But what about after that? How much more would they need spend to maintain this? This is actually a big gamble. Similarly, they have built protective barriers and walls on the coasts to stop the floods.
We've been engaged to construct about 1,400 metres of berm top barriers, along with 200 metres of concrete seawall, as well as construct 7 rooftop units.
It's been done in the Maldives too, but the Maldives has a lot more money than Tuvalu because of the Maldives' successful and thriving tourism industry, whereas Tuvalu is a remote and inaccessible country. The majority of the government's revenue comes from the money donated by other countries. The UK, Australia, and New Zealand contributed the most. So, to some extent, they are trying to build climate-resilient infrastructure and grow salt-resistant crops so that even if the seawater reaches the crops, it won't be destroyed. But this country is so geographically unlucky and has such limited resources that it faces unimaginable danger. To prepare for the worst-case scenario, their government has started working on Plan B as well, the entire population leaving the country. It was only 2 years ago that Tuvalu signed the Phalappili Union Treaty with Australia. This treaty provides a special visa provision, according to which, every year, Australia will give permanent residence to 280 citizens of Tuvalu. This is being called climate visa. This is the first time in human history has a country issued such a climate visa. The visa applications opened up on 16th June, and more than 8,750 people in Tuvalu applied for it. A whopping 82% of the country's population chose the option to leave the country. But how will Australia choose 280 people out of these 8,750 applicants who will be allowed to migrate? Will it be based on their educational qualifications, their job potential, or their age? Australia chose none of these parameters because it would be unfair for others. Climate change will impact everyone equally. That's why Australia will use a lottery system. After verifying the documents of these 8,000 plus people, 280 of them will be chosen by the lottery system and will be given permanent residency in Australia this year. These 280 people will get health, education, housing, and employment benefits. However, they won't be allowed to vote in the elections like the Australian citizens. Now imagine if Australia keeps granting citizenship to 280 people every year. It will take about 40 years for everyone to officially leave the country. Apart from this, Phalappili Union Treaty states that no matter what happens due to climate change, whether or not Tuvalu has physical boundaries, Australia will always consider Tuvalu as a sovereign country. Interestingly, even without the climate visa, the citizens of Tuvalu have other options. Like the citizens of other countries, they can go to Australia or New Zealand for education or employment. So, the citizens of Tuvalu were already migrating to these two countries. Combining all of them, every year, around 4% of the population is migrating from the country. If this rate continues, Half of the people would have left in the next 17 years. But the biggest question is, what will happen to Tuvalu? Will this country continue existing according to the Montevideo Convention to be recognized as a sovereign country? A country must have clearly defined territory and a permanent population. But if the entire country goes underwater, neither will they have a defined territory nor a permanent population. That's why, to protect Tuvalu's status as a sovereign nation, Tuvalu has appealed to the United Nations. They've asked the United Nations for an international treaty for the rising sea levels so that the affected countries might remain sovereign nations. Additionally, they've demanded that maritime boundaries be permanently defined so that even if a country sinks, no other country can come occupy its area. Tuvalu has also amended its constitution. After this amendment, it has declared itself to be a virtual state. It mentions that even if all of Tuvalu's land is submerged in water, Tuvalu will continue to be a country. People will retain their citizenship and their claim over this area. This is why a digital copy of the country is being made. Every house, every tree, every little thing is going through 3D scanning so that Tuvalu can be recreated digitally. People are scanning things they cherish, their most valued possessions, and are trying to recreate memories digitally. Some are storing their grandfather's stories. Some are storing festival dances. They're worried that their culture might be destroyed. They are also planning to move their government to the digital world so that they can keep working virtually even after Tuvalu sinks. For this, digital passports will be created. It will play a central role in the government's function, be it elections or a referendum, birth, death, or marriage registration. Everything will be done through these passports. Tuvalu believes that making a digital copy of their country will not only help in preserving their sovereignty, but it will also help in protecting their cultural heritage.
Our land, our ocean, our culture are the most precious assets of our people. And to keep them safe from harm, no matter what happens in the physical world, we'll move them to the cloud.
This is how Tuvalu's soul can survive. The people who would have lost their country in this virtual world will be able to remain connected with their heritage and each other. Tuvalu's status as a virtual state has been recognized by 25 countries, including Australia and New Zealand. But unfortunately, this isn't the story of only one country. Because of climate change, Tuvalu and many other countries are in danger. Nauru, Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, and perhaps the most unfortunate thing for the people living here is that they had a next to no contribution to climate change. In reality, it is the bigger nations like America, Germany, France, India, and China who are responsible for most of the carbon emissions. Only 20 countries in G20 are responsible for 80% of the global emissions. And who suffers the most severe consequences of this? The small island nations like Tuvalu, whose carbon footprint is nothing.
Tuvalu is literally sinking. We must take action now.
Australia, which helps Tuvalu, is a major contributor. The coal and gas exported by Australia to other countries, after Russia, they produce the most carbon emissions. Although Australia's contribution to global emissions is only 1%, but the pollution caused by their exports, the emissions, Australia's contribution is about 4.5% in the context. The Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Valetti Teo, says that the expansion of fossil fuels in countries like Australia is akin to a death sentence for their country. He won't allow other countries decide Tuvalu's future.
To put it plainly, it is a death sentence if larger nations continue to increase their emission levels.
Here you might be asking, why does Australia care? Why would it want to help Tuvalu? How is this benefiting Australia? To some extent, friends, this is out of compassion. Australia actually wants to help these countries. It sees itself as the protector of these small nations. But apart from climate change, there are some geopolitical strategic reasons too. It is being reported that Australia signed this treaty to stop China's expansion in the Pacific Ocean. One of the clauses of this treaty states that without Australia's consent, Tuvalu cannot enter into any partnership or agreement with any country in matters of security or defense. This clause gives Australia a veto power in matters related to defense, because without its consent, Tuvalu won't enter into any defense partnership with any country. Tuvalu is also one of the 12 countries that have formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. This country recognizes Taiwan as a country, but not China. And to change this position, Tuvalu has received multiple offers from China. Before Australia, Tuvalu's officials had spoken to China. But this was risky for Australia. In the Pacific Ocean, in a way, Australia and China are direct competitors. Australia does not want China's influence to get stronger around it. This is why Australia signed this legally binding treaty with Tuvalu. This will prevent Tuvalu from recognizing China even in the future. Friends, as I said, Tuvalu is not the only low-lying country in this area. There are many other countries in the Pacific Ocean which do not have a significant elevation. The existence of all these countries is threatened by the rising sea levels. These countries are fighting it in different ways. Let's look at Kiribati. In 2014, this country bought 20 square kilometers of land in Fiji so that citizens can be relocated there after the country sinks.